But first, this uproar about Bettina Arndt. Even demands now by a Labor Attorney General to strip Arndt of her Order of Australia. Now, before we get to that and to Arndt herself, context. You know, as a country, we really do need to find a better way to argue. And I'd really like us to get back to responding to opinions we don't like, not with abuse or violence and whatever, but with argument, with reason. And too often now it seems that the bullies and the thugs are in charge. And I think most Australians, obviously the most decent ones, have had it with this new culture of bullying. And they've had it with the way that so many activists don't want to debate. Instead, we see them trying to shut down debates, attacking people, just trying to hear a debate. Now we're seeing them also threatening opponents' businesses like ours, or storming their properties, their farms, and disrupting the speeches of politicians and shouting people down. You know, I do think most Australians, again the decent ones, have also had it up to here with the new crudity in so-called debate, particularly from the left, the abuse. The way some people, you know, they see a person that they don't agree with and they just abuse them. They don't try to prove them wrong, just abuse. And we saw that at a concert this month. This really got me on my holiday couch. Youngblood, a climate activist, leading a crowd in chants of F ScoMo, F, well the full word, we'll bleep it out, F our Prime Minister. Barbarians jumping around there. And then there's this new cancel culture. You know, campaigns to stop people that activists don't agree with from even being able to put their arguments or defend themselves. Campaigns to stop them from speaking or even being employed or publicly recognised in any way. Just this week, we had former tennis stars John McEnroe and Martina Navratilova lead a protest to rename the Margaret Court Arena because they simply don't like what that great champion and charity worker once said about same-sex marriage. Also, just this week, we even had the Morrison government sacking an advisor who said, hey, Aboriginal historian Bruce Pascoe is not actually Aboriginal, you know. How dare she tell the truth? And we've got the ABC, a national broadcaster, refusing to hire a single Conservative to host any of its main current affairs show, Death by Silence. It's getting so bad that even people on the left are now getting scared of this cancel culture. People like Barack Obama. Maybe some of them are feeling threatened by it too, now that we see even a great writer like Lionel Shriver having some activist stage and noise and dramatic walkout of a speech where Shriver merely criticised ludicrous identity politics. And we see even feminist icon Germaine Greer getting disinvited from 2 writers' festivals for criticising the excesses of the Me Too movement. You know, we have the genius Barry Humphries, the comedian, having his name taken off the Barry Awards for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival because he criticised radical transgender activists. Seriously? This has to stop. Don't you think? It's nuts. It's the sort of thing that makes us stupid. I mean, can't we just disagree by using sweet reason? You don't like someone? Prove them wrong. Can't we just trust our fellow Australians to listen to an argument and decide for themselves whether it's true or whether it's important? Do we have to silence people, rob people of that freedom to decide for themselves? Which brings me to Bettina Arndt. Has just been made a member of the Order of Australia. To the rage, though, of many activists and journalists and some ABC presenters. Hello, Virginia. Bettina Arndt is an author, has a Master's of Clinical Psychology. She worked as a sex therapist and a columnist and has argued against the new fashion to demonise men. Now, Arndt recently did a speaking tour of universities exposing a dodgy survey used by university bosses and leftist groups to claim that there's a rape culture on our campuses. Now, I checked that survey. It was completely ludicrous. The figures wildly exaggerated. But apparently calling out dodgy statistics when they're used to make men seem like monsters, that's no. That infuriated radical activists. Leftist groups at Sydney University, for instance, violently blockaded Arndt's lecture there and tried to shout it down. And activists at other universities did the same. Here's what Arndt faced at Melbourne's La Trobe University.
Her every chance of their hearing.
But as I said, despite that abuse, Arndt on Australia Day was made a member of the Order of Australia for significant service to the community as a social commentator and to gender equity through advocacy for men. And that's driven radical feminists and the cancel culture warriors nuts. In fact, today, Victoria's Attorney General, Jill Hennessy, has had the hide to write to the Governor-General demanding that Arndt be stripped of her Order of Australia.
I also very strongly hold the view that celebrating people who have minimised the experience of people that are victims of sexual violence or victims of family violence sends a really dangerous message to those that have lived unbearable lives enduring such violence and abuse.
This is crazy. Most of Arndt's career has been simply to put facts before the public and say, hey, listen, men aren't monsters, don't exaggerate, right? But Hennessy and others are also using now as their excuse to humiliate her, in my opinion, one mistake that Arndt once made and for which she apologised a couple of years ago. Arndt had interviewed an admitted paedophile called Nicholas Bester, a teacher who was jailed for grooming and abusing a 15-year-old girl, his own student. And I think Arndt let him get away with far too much, treated him far too lightly.
If you're having sex with a woman and she is 17 years old today and it's 1 minute to midnight and she's 18 tomorrow, then tonight it's illegal, and 1 minute past midnight when she's 18, it's legal.
Yeah, but you knew at the time she was underage.
Oh, yes, I did, yes.
Actually, Mr. Bester, your victim was 15. Now, Arndt was actually interviewing Bester because he'd been harassed by a vigilante mob after serving his sentence, right? And she thought, well, how does a guy then get his life back together again? But in 2018, she apologised for the tone she'd taken. She's also removed the video of the interview from her site. And this one mistake, regretted and apologised for, does that really negate a whole career? Or is it, as I say, an excuse? And really, I don't think one interview at all is the real reason why leftists like Hennessy want Arndt stripped of her honour and erased from the public space. I think they actually want her punished for her other speeches, for speaking truths they do not want you to know. And I think that cannot be allowed to stand.